I woke up from a stroke to discover my son had not only abandoned me in the hospital, but had used my recovery as a cover to steal my life savings. He chose greed, so I chose consequence, ensuring he would spend the next decade quietly paying for every single cent he took. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The ceiling was a cheap industrial tile I did not recognize, and the monitor next to my head beeped too loud. That beeping noise was the soundtrack to my life ending. My tongue was a heavy stone, and a strange pressure held the left side of my face hostage. It took a few agonizing seconds to grasp the verdict. I was in a hospital bed, and I had suffered a stroke. I remembered sipping my peppermint tea on the porch. Then the trembling started in my hand, moving quickly to my mouth. I dropped the ceramic cup and knocked the small table over. I managed one frantic call to Reggie, my son. He came fast, or at least his voice on the phone sounded urgent and comforting. He promised everything would be okay. He held my purse in one hand and gripped my shoulder with the other. That was the last time I saw him. The nurse, a kind woman with tired eyes, checked my vitals later that morning. "Has my son been by?" I asked, my voice a thick whisper. She hesitated, her eyes flickering away. "Not today, Miss Shaw, but maybe later." Later came and went. So did the next day, then the next. No flowers, no fresh clothes, no sign of him. By the fourth day, I shut my mouth. By the fifth, the discharge nurse looked at me with a pity that tasted like ash. "Do you have someone picking you up?" I lied. "Yes," I said, steadying my shaky hand. I grabbed the discharge papers and called a cab with the $20 tucked behind my ID card. That $20 bill was my tiny act of defiance. The cab driver didn't talk. I appreciated that. My throat still felt like it belonged to someone else. Cut to verb. I stepped into my living room. The house was cold. The quiet that hit me was not comforting. It suffocated. My porch light was dark. My favorite potted plants were brittle and dying. I walked to the kitchen counter. I nearly slipped on an envelope. It was a hospital bill, but stamped across the front in a bold, official red, was paid in full. My brow furrowed. I hadn't paid anything. I hadn't even seen the bill yet. A spike of raw panic hit my chest. This was wrong. I slid onto the scratched wooden chair, the one where I used to plan Reggie's birthday cakes. I grabbed my laptop. I tried logging into my online bank account. My usual password failed. I tried the backup, locked out. My hands were slick with sweat. I grabbed my cell phone and called the bank. I waited 43 minutes on hold, listening to terrible synthetic jazz. Every second felt like a punch. Finally, a woman answered, all cheerfulness and bureaucracy. "Ma'am, I see here the password and contact number were updated 2 days ago." My heart hammered against my ribs. "By who?" "Mr. Reggie Shaw. He was listed as your authorized party." The phone slipped, hitting the countertop with a crack. That was the first knife. I slid the phone onto speaker and called my insurance company next, praying the lie would stop here. A representative named Cheryl answered. I asked about my supplemental policy. She chirped, "Oh yes, your policy payout had already been processed." Her voice was too loud, too close. $18,000. She said like it was a miracle, Miss Evelyn, just last week. "What payout?" I said, the words heavy and slow. "Your critical recovery benefit. The funds were deposited into the account ending in 0944. "Can you tell me the name on that account?" I barely breathed. The air in my kitchen grew thin. "Raisha," she replied. "It says he's your son." That was the moment the fear vaporized. It was replaced by a brutal cold fury that settled over me like a new skin. He hadn't planned. He hadn't just taken money. He had used my own name to steal my future. He saw me as a liability, an old woman with shaky hands and a brain fogged by illness. I thanked Cheryl, hung up, and walked to the hallway closet. My hands no longer shook. I dug out an old manila envelope with a card I hadn't touched in 22 years. It was from Sonia Blanchard, one of my brightest former students. She had sent it after she passed the bar exam. The card read, "If you ever need me, Miss Shaw, I'll be there." I picked up the phone again. Cut to verb. She answered on the second ring, sharp and professional. "Blanchard Law." "Sonia," I said. "It's Miss Shaw." There was a catch in her breath. "Miss Shaw, is everything okay?" "No," I said, looking at the envelope. "But it's about to be." I told her everything. The stroke, the abandonment, the account changes, the fraudulent $18,000 claim. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, her voice was steel. "Reggie messed with the wrong woman," Sonia said. "Good," I replied, because I just gave her the name. Sonia didn't waste a minute. Cut to verb. By the next morning, she had verified the forged documents and filed an immediate financial fraud report with my insurance company. The fee for her time hit my new recovery credit card. That was the micro cost of doing business. We sat across from each other in her small, functional office. I could smell fresh leather and coffee, a sensory jolt that anchored me in the now. She pulled up a statement on her monitor, reading every detail out loud, so I could hear the brutal truth for myself. "Clear as day, Evelyn," she said, her voice low. "3 claim payments filed against your policy, 18,000, 12,000, and another 6. She slid a paper across the desk. It had my name, my policy, my social security number, and the destination account. "The money went into an account registered under a company," Sonia said, pointing with her pen. "Shaw Wellness Consulting." I nearly choked on the air. He created a fake company in my name. He filed the LLC online, used a third-party platform for the business account, Sonia explained, compressing months of crime into one breath. That's how he funneled the money. He thought he'd be clever. He wasn't clever. He was cowardly. The knife twisted again. He also discovered that he had rerouted your monthly disability check. That stunned me most. That little bit I received every month, barely enough for groceries and prescriptions, was being diverted. He had submitted a change of address form, claiming I had moved in with him. I hadn't been on his doorstep in over a year. I pushed back from the desk. "I don't want a refund, Sonia," I said. "I want justice." "You'll get it," she promised. "Do you want to press criminal charges now or wait?" "Wait," I said instantly. I saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes. This was my first lossy line, admitting that getting the money back wasn't enough. I needed to feel his fear. I want him to feel safe first. Let him think he got away with it. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about watching the fear bloom on his face when he realized the ground under him wasn't just shaking. No, it was gone. 2 weeks of silence followed. The wait was a taut wire stretched between my kitchen and Sonia's office. I didn't call Reggie. I didn't reach out. I kept my word. Then the phone rang. It was him. "Hey, Ma, just checking in. You good?" he asked, his voice dripping with false concern. "Oh, I'm doing okay," I said sweetly, maintaining the illusion. "Just taking it slow, resting." He laughed, the sound hollow. "That's good. Candace and I are thinking of starting a business, something wellness-focused, you know, helping people get their lives on track." My hand tightened on the phone. This was the audacity I needed. I wanted to spit out the word fraud. Instead, I forced a line that echoed my own pain. "Sounds wonderful, baby. Just be careful who you trust." This rhetorical emphasis was my tiny jab. "Always, Ma, always." He chuckled and hung up. Cut to verb. I sat in the chair staring at the wall. My heart had stopped hurting. What I felt was clarity. The truth was sharp and brutal. Reggie didn't love me. He loved what I gave him. The comfort, the savings, the foundation. Sonia's final paperwork was ready. A civil suit for fraud, the insurance investigation officially underway, and the quiet freeze on all accounts connected to Shaw Wellness Consulting. The banks needed another week for the audit. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I was still standing. I looked at the dark wood of the kitchen chair, the faded initials he'd carved years ago. That boy thought he could hurt me. He was wrong. I let him think he was safe. I spent the next week operating on pure, cold focus. Sonia had executed the initial account freeze, a major win, but she called me 2 days later with a catch. "Evelyn, Reggie made a move," she said. Her voice was taut. "He somehow accessed a remote notary and filed a secondary document, a declaration that states you were incapacitated when I received your power of attorney." The blood drained from my face, my jaw locked. "He forged another one." "It doesn't matter if it's real. It matters that it's filed," Sonia explained, her words a rapid-fire legal microcapsule. "Affidavit lands. My window shrinks to 12 minutes. He claims I'm exploiting you. The temporary freeze is off." My knuckles turned white on the counter. Reggie wasn't just reacting. He was fighting back. He had tried to block me from accessing the truth by hiding the accounts. Now he was trying to block my lawyer from accessing him. This was the midpoint reversal. "What now?" I asked, my voice flat. "We pivot. The criminal fraud report is too slow. We proceed with the civil suit immediately. We hit him with a visible consequence he can't file away, a server at his door." This renewed aggression, this fresh betrayal, was the leverage I needed. If he could forge documents after the stroke, what would he do next? I realized my physical absence was still his shield. Cut to verb. I walked into my bedroom closet, pulled out a battered cardboard box, and opened it. Inside were my old photo albums, heavy with the weight of 20 years. Photos of Reggie, a toothless grin at age 7, his high school diploma, the awful yellow tie he wore to his wedding. I needed to clear the line of sight. I sat on the floor and pulled the photos out, one by one. I didn't tear them or burn them. I just slid them out of their protective plastic sheets and dropped them into a second empty box. I dusted the frames, kissed the glass, and packed them away. This was my intimacy line, an action that revealed the raw pain of letting go of the memory of the son I raised, to make way for the consequence of the man he became. I wasn't erasing him, but I wasn't going to honor someone who treated me like an afterthought. I called Sonia back. "Hit him, Sonia," I said. "Use the full force of the $43,800 combined claim. Send the process server this afternoon." Cut to verb. The next day, I went to the grocery store near my neighborhood, the first time in weeks. I leaned on the cart, moving slowly through the familiar aisles. People smiled. The cashier waved. I felt a fragile sense of reclaiming my routine. Then I saw him, Reggie. He was standing in the frozen food section with Candace. Their cart was full of expensive cuts of steak, imported wine, and name-brand everything. Candace was talking fast, pointing at things, tossing them into the cart without looking at the price tags. Reggie was nodding, laughing, the picture of the good provider. My blood didn't boil. It froze. This was the life he had purchased with my stroke. I stepped quickly down the other aisle. I didn't confront them. I didn't even breathe loudly. I just watched, invisible, waiting until they moved out of sight. I finished my own shopping quickly, buying only what I needed. But I left that store knowing one thing, a clarity that clicked into place like a loaded magazine. They were about to lose everything they thought they owned. The lock clicked once, but not for me. The next call from Sonia was short and clean. "It's time, Evelyn. Everything's confirmed." She had filed the civil suit, attached the evidence of the diverted disability check, and served the papers. The confrontation had begun. I spent the next few days in a quiet state of preparation. I spent hours cleaning the house, not out of necessity, but with intention. I was scrubbing away the residue of his betrayal. I was stirring oatmeal and humming an old hymn when my phone rang. It was Reggie. I watched his name flash on the screen and let it go to voicemail. He tried again and again. On the fourth call, I answered. "Ma, please," he choked out. I didn't say anything. I let the silence hang there, heavy and accusatory. "Ma, I didn't know what I was doing," he rushed. "I thought you'd be okay. I figured I'd get the money back before you noticed. It wasn't meant to go this far." I cut him off, reciting the facts like a bill of indictment. "You filed a fake business under my name," I said calmly. "You diverted my disability income. You forged signatures. You filed 3 fraudulent claims using my private health records." He was quiet. I could hear his shaky breath on the line. "I was just trying to get ahead," he mumbled. "By stepping on your mother?" "It wasn't like that." He tried to wriggle out of it. "Then explain it," I demanded. He didn't. He never admitted it was greed, only poor judgment. He asked if I could talk to Sonia. He complained the court stuff was ruining everything. Candace had left. His business account was frozen. He couldn't pay his rent. I stirred my oatmeal. The warmth of the spoon in my hand grounded me. This was the somatic tell tied to a micro-choice. "I'm sorry you're struggling, Reggie," I said, and I meant it. But you had 2 choices. You picked the one where I stop being your mother and start being your consequence. "That's cold, Ma." "So was leaving me in a hospital bed," I countered, and hung up before he could answer. The world narrows to a target. Cut to verb. The following Friday, I walked into the hair salon on Main Street, the same one I hadn't visited in months. The women there knew me, but no one asked about the stroke or Reggie. "Trim or color today, Miss Evelyn?" "Both," I said, smiling. They cheered. They pulled me to the chair. The scissors snipped sharply. The sound was an audio anchor, a concrete promise. By the time I walked out, my gray curls had shape again. My eyebrows were neatened. I looked alive. Not the version Reggie expected to leave in a gown, waiting to be forgotten. I stopped by the grocery store, picked up a few items, and bought a lemon pie on sale. Then I drove to Reggie's apartment. I knew he wouldn't expect me. The mailbox was rusted. A package sat unopened on his chipped step. I didn't knock. I took a copy of the court filing and taped it directly to the door. Then I took the certified insurance refund check, the $36,000 that had just arrived. I taped the check and the receipt above the court summons, my name, and the recovered amount bold and clear. On top of the receipt, I left a short note. "You took what you thought I'd never miss. Now watch how far I make it go." I didn't wait. I walked away in silence. Just the sound of my heels on the concrete, a cinematic cadence, a decisive action. My lemon pie was only the appetizer. The next Friday, Reggie and Candace were hosting a small cookout in their backyard. Family, church folks, friends, a public display of their wellness consulting success. This was the planned escalation to the social rung of the ladder. I wasn't invited, of course, but I showed up anyway, wearing white, holding the lemon pie. Cut to verb. Candace opened the door. Her face dropped like a stone. "Miss Evelyn." "Oh, hi. We weren't expecting." "I know," I said, stepping inside before she could block me. I kept my voice sweet and low, a vulnerability ping that risked my dignity by appearing uninvited. Thought I'd stop by. I brought pie. Reggie appeared behind her, confused and nervous. Ma, what are you doing here? I looked past him toward the backyard, where the noise of the party was loud. Just wanted to see how my investments were doing, I said. He looked confused. I walked past him and handed the pie to a woman from the church. Then I turned back and handed Reggie a thin manila envelope, exactly like the one that held Sonia's card. What's this? He asked, his voice tight. Your future, I replied. He opened it and froze. Inside was the civil suit, the court summons, the insurance documentation, and the printed spreadsheet of every dollar he'd taken. This tangible artifact forced a choice right now. Candace read over his shoulder, her face draining of color. You told me that money was from a bonus, she whispered, her betrayal exposed to the world. Reggie just stared at me. The backyard noise faded. I stepped closer, my hand steady, and patted his shoulder gently. Good luck at the hearing, baby. I hear judges don't take kindly to elder fraud these days. I turned and walked out, letting the screen door slam shut behind me. Some things don't need to be shouted. They just need to be served cold. Cut to verb. It was quiet for 2 days. Reggie's silence was never out of respect. It was always out of fear. He was sitting somewhere, rereading the envelope, trying to figure out how the woman he left for dead had flipped the script. On the third morning, my phone rang. It was Candace. I ignored it. She left me a voicemail, a rambling confession. She claimed she didn't know what Reggie had done, that she was sorry I was dragged into it. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She was making an on-page bid to save her own reputation. I respected the honesty of her retreat, but I didn't respond. A few days later, I was walking out of the pharmacy. Cut to verb. Across the street, I saw Reggie. He was hunched over, checking his phone, dressed in worn-out khakis and a wrinkled shirt. He looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from being found out. He glanced up. Our eyes locked. He opened his mouth to speak. My hand was steady on my purse. I shook my head, a small, decisive action. He closed his mouth. He turned and walked away without saying a word. This was the power he didn't understand, that I could look at him and feel nothing. Not rage, not guilt, just clarity. I paid for my blood pressure pills. I walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. I had found my peace. The silence was always about fear. 2 weeks after I ambushed Reggie at his cookout, the full consequences of my actions began to set in, but they weren't mine. They were his. Sonia had everything moving like clockwork. The insurance investigation was officially open. Their legal team had verified every forged claim, every fake document, every account opened in my name. The civil suit was scheduled for a hearing in 3 weeks. Reggie was being charged with elder financial abuse and identity fraud. Sonia said a conviction could mean jail time, but we were going to press for restitution instead. I didn't need him in a cell. I needed him to live with the weight of what he did every day while rebuilding his life from nothing. In the meantime, Sonia helped me set up a recovery account. The insurance company had already agreed to refund my benefits due to the verified fraud. A restitution claim was also filed with the bank. They froze the fraudulent accounts and began legal forfeiture proceedings. That Friday, I received the first reimbursement check by certified mail, $36,000. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, not because of the amount, but because of what it symbolized. That money had once been stolen from me, taken behind my back while I was unconscious in a sterile room, eating Jell-O off a plastic tray. Now this envelope came with accountability. I deposited the check, then sat down with Sonia to plan the rest. We agreed I'd set aside some funds for home upgrades, new carpet, a better heater for the winter, maybe even that electric recliner I'd been eyeing for years. But more importantly, we set up a foundation. I called it the Evelyn Shaw Emergency Fund. It would be a small, quiet program to help elderly women caught in financial abuse, especially those targeted by their own family. I wasn't starting a charity. I was building an escape hatch for women like me, women who gave everything and were left with nothing. Cut to verb. That night, I stood on my porch and watched the sun go down, the sky painted in soft blues and sharp golds. I made a promise to myself. Whatever came next, I wouldn't just survive it. I'd shape it. My life didn't end in that hospital bed. It restarted with clarity, with purpose, and with a sharpened sense of what it meant to reclaim not just your money, but your voice. The next day, I walked into the community center with a file folder under my arm and a cardigan over my shoulders. The room was smaller than I imagined, but the energy in it was solid. 3 older women were already seated. I introduced myself softly. They didn't need the whole story, just enough to let them know that I'd been through something too. One of them, Miss Bernardine, said her daughter drained her account by slowly helping with her bills. Another, Gloria, said her grandson used her card to buy an iPhone and tried to blame it on a hacked account. The third just nodded quietly, but held my hand a little longer than necessary. We didn't cry. We planned. Reggie didn't call again, but Candace did. She left me a voice message saying she didn't know what Reggie had done and was sorry I was dragged into it. She never asked for forgiveness, and I respected that. Forgiveness wasn't out of reach, but it wasn't owed either. I decided to get my hair done. The court date was confirmed. Reggie would stand before the judge in just under 2 weeks. Sonia had already spoken to the prosecutor and presented the full fraud record. There was enough evidence to bury him if I wanted to, but I didn't want prison. I wanted repayment. I wanted every cent he took returned. I wanted every sleepless night he caused compensated. I wanted every ounce of pride he stripped from me to cost him something he'd actually feel. Let him keep walking free, I told Sonia, folding my hands in my lap, but let him walk broke. Sonia was prepared to argue for maximum restitution and an enforceable garnishment order. He'd be paying me back monthly for the next 10 years minimum. If he defaulted, we'd seize whatever pitiful accounts he tried to hide behind. She even filed a freeze on any future tax returns. If he tried to run, his own money would chase him. That was enough. Later that afternoon, I stepped into the hair salon on Main Street. The women there knew me well, too well, and yet no one asked anything more than trim or color today, Miss Evelyn. I smiled and said, both. They cheered and pulled me to the chair. Cut to verb. By the time I walked out of there, my gray curls had shape again. My eyebrows were neatened. My cheeks held just enough rouge to feel fresh. I looked like myself again. Not the version Reggie expected to leave in a gown, barely aware, waiting to be forgotten. I looked alive. I stopped by the grocery store, picked up fresh okra, a few pears, and a lemon pie on sale. Then I made one final stop. Reggie's apartment. It wasn't far, just 2 turns off the main road up a hill with chipped sidewalks. I knew he wouldn't be expecting me, especially now that Candace had left. The mailbox was rusted. I didn't knock. I left a copy of the court filing taped to the door. And on top of that, a receipt. The insurance refund check, my name, the recovered amount of $36,000. I taped a short note next to it that said, "You took what you thought I'd never miss. Now watch how far I make it go." I didn't wait around to see if he came outside. I didn't care if he read it right then, or tore it up in front of the mirror. I walked away in silence. That night, I cooked okra stew with cornbread and sat down with a glass of sweet tea. My eyes were on the framed certificate Sonia had given me earlier that week. It read, Founder Shaw, Emergency Fund for Elder Protection, established 2025. Because now every dollar Reggie paid back wouldn't just sit in my account. It would serve women like me. He didn't just pay for what he stole. He paid forward something far bigger. The only thing left was the courtroom. The day of the hearing came faster than I expected. I spent the night before ironing my navy blue slacks and pressing the soft-colored blouse I only wore to graduations and funerals. I didn't want to look like a victim. I wanted to look like the woman Reggie tried to erase and failed. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself, not because of age or lines or soft skin, but because I was standing straighter, like something heavy had finally lifted. Sonia picked me up in a black sedan she borrowed from her firm. She looked sharp as ever, hair tied back, glasses on, folder in her lap. She greeted me with a soft nod and a quiet, "You ready?" I didn't answer. I just nodded once. Cut to verb. The courthouse wasn't anything special. A plain building, faded flag out front. But to me, that courtroom was the place I was finally going to breathe without anger sitting in my chest. Reggie was already there when we arrived, sitting 3 benches forward, head bowed. No lawyer, just him, a cheap, wrinkled suit, and the weight of every wrong decision he'd made in the last year. He didn't see me at first. I sat down with Sonia and let him sweat. The judge arrived and opened the docket. He called Reggie's name and started reading the charges. It didn't feel like just another case. It felt personal. Mr. Reggie Shaw, you are charged with the following: financial fraud, identity theft, forgery, and elder exploitation. The judge looked up. Do you understand these charges? Reggie stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. Sonia stood and presented our case clearly. No frills, no emotion, just the facts. Reggie had filed false claims on my insurance, used a fake business name to launder the payouts, and rerouted my monthly checks into his own account for nearly 5 months. She submitted bank statements, notarized documents, and even included screenshots of Reggie messaging Candace, joking about milking Mom's policy. The courtroom was silent as the judge flipped through each page. He turned to Reggie. Do you have anything to say before I rule? Reggie cleared his throat. His voice was small. I didn't mean to hurt my mom, he said. I was in a bad place. I thought she'd be okay. I figured I'd replace the money before she noticed. I didn't think she'd press charges. The judge raised an eyebrow. So your defense is that you expected her to stay quiet? No, I panicked. I messed up. The judge turned to me. Miss Shaw, would you like to speak? I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my back was straight. My son left me in a hospital bed. My voice was low but carried. He used my recovery as an opportunity to steal, not to show care. And he didn't stop after one transaction. He kept going. He changed passwords. He forged documents. He created a whole lie to keep bleeding me dry. So yes, Your Honor, I noticed. And yes, I pressed charges because if I hadn't, what would have stopped him from doing it again? The judge nodded. I sat back down and squeezed Sonia's hand. When the ruling came, it landed like thunder. Reggie was found liable on all civil counts. The judge issued a full restitution order, $43,800 to be paid over the next 10 years with wage garnishment applied to any form of income. All fraudulent accounts were frozen. If he missed a single payment, a felony fraud case would be reopened, and he would face criminal sentencing. It wasn't jail, but it was something better. He'd be reminded of what he did every month when the deduction hit his check. every job he applied to, every tax season. That was the kind of punishment that lingers. I turned and walked away. After the hearing, Reggie approached me in the hallway. His voice was cracked, his eyes damp. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. "Ma," he said, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that don't fix it. I didn't say anything." He kept going. "Candace left. She moved back with her sister. The business is gone. I'm trying to find work, but with the freeze." I held up my hand, stopping the flow of excuses. "I didn't come here to hear about your consequences," I said. "I came here to collect on what's mine." He blinked hard. "I really messed up." "You didn't mess up," I said. "You made choices over and over. You chose yourself. Now I'm choosing me." He tried to speak again, but I turned and walked away. Cut to verb. Later that evening, I sat on my porch with a blanket over my knees, listening to crickets and sipping warm tea. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was still. The kind of stillness that comes after surviving a storm you didn't ask for. I opened the envelope Sonia had handed me. Inside was the formal court record, the settlement terms, and the first monthly restitution deposit. Direct transfer, automatic. He wouldn't be able to stop it, even if he tried. I flipped through the papers, then placed them under my Bible. Then I walked into my kitchen and opened a notebook. At the top, I wrote, "Shaw Emergency Fund Expansion Plan." Because while Reggie had stolen from me, he had also, without meaning to, funded something bigger. That money wasn't just repayment. It was restoration. It would go to women like Bernardine and Gloria. Reggie didn't just pay for what he took. He paid for something righteous. And every time his account emptied, I'd be filling someone else's cup. People say revenge is loud, that it's fire and fury and screaming at the top of your lungs. But that's not how it really is. For women like me, older, overlooked, written off, revenge is quiet. It's steady. It's a signature written in calm hands. It's your son staring at you from across the courtroom, realizing you're not the fragile woman he thought he could fool. A month after the court ruling, the first payment hit my account. $438.72. It wasn't the number that mattered. It was the silence that followed. Reggie had learned finally that this wasn't a negotiation. I cared that for the next 10 years, my name would appear on his bank statement every single month. A reminder. A scar. Not for spite, but because if I didn't remind him of what he did, he'd forget. And forgetting would mean he could do it again to someone else. The community fund was growing faster than I imagined. We hosted a small luncheon at the church basement. We didn't need a fancy banquet. We had stories. Women came up to me and whispered thank yous, like I'd done something heroic. I hadn't. I just decided not to be quiet anymore. The next weekend, Sonia took me to the ribbon-cutting ceremony for our new legal resource room at the community center. I stood behind the podium in my Sunday best, looked out at a sea of faces, mostly women, and said this: "I once trusted someone I loved not to betray me. I thought family meant protection. But when that trust was broken, I had two choices: stay silent or speak up. I chose my voice. And now, because of that, we're building something that will help other women speak up, too." Later that night, I sat on my porch with the newsletter in my lap. I looked out into the dark, let the breeze wrap around my shoulders like an old friend. I had spent my whole life giving. Now I'd finally taken something back. Not out of anger, out of survival. And from that day forward, every time I saw that monthly deposit in my bank account, I didn't think of Reggie. I thought of every woman who would never again doubt what she deserved. My next move was already written. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.